good afternoon, everybody. About 2:30 now, so we can get started. So my name is Holdaway. I'm with the Joint Centre for Satellite Data Assimilation of the JCSDA. I've been working there now for about 3 months. And I'm working on this JEDI project. This is what we're discussing today in the tutorial. So thank you for coming. Thanks for showing interest in this system. This is essentially going to be a new data assimilation system, which can be used across all different sensors running all kinds of models. And today we'll be sort of going into some of the details of the system, going through the different components of the system, talking about the whole role of each component, and then go into some of the code, the side so that they can start to get a feel for what things look like and get a feel for how this system works. There's a number of people involved in the project. So the names listed here is the so-called JEDI core team. So Yannick Tremblay is actually the lead of that group, and he joined the joint centre from the ECNWS about almost 2 years ago now. And then the rest of the folks here working on different components of the system. I'm a part of that JEDI core team, but I'm actually based here in the Goddard, while the rest of the team are based in Colorado and Boulder. Okay, so yeah. You wanna sit here? Not the nice, beautiful room. Do our best. Okay. So the overview of the talk here. So I'll start by giving an introduction to the JEDI project and the JCSDA in general, and then we have enough chairs for everybody. Are there any more chairs over there? You might want to grab one. Then the second part of the talk we'll talk about the OOP framework. I'll talk about what OOP is, and we'll go into the idea of object-oriented programming. Might be new to folks. And then we'll talk about the model interfacing elements of the JEDI system, and focus particularly on FV3-JEDI, which is the JEDI that will be used by both NSEP and NASA. And then we'll talk about USO and IODA, which is how we handle operations in JEDI. And then at the end, I'll talk about these collaborative tools. And this is actually quite an important element of this project, is the infrastructure and working practices that we're trying to kind of bring along with this code and try to sort of make the whole thing work a bit more seamlessly than it perhaps has in the past with the GSI system. So it's going to be a big departure from the GSI system in a lot of ways. So kind of making it sort of streamlined is going to be quite important. And I would say that this talk is essentially drawn from in June we had a JEDI Academy for about a week. So we had a number of talks throughout that week on all these different components. We had about an hour on each component. So here it's going to be sort of a condensed. And if people are interested in working with JEDI in the future, we'll be running these academies hopefully quite frequently. The next one will be in November, and that will be here in College Park. So there should be some announcements on that hopefully pretty soon. When you come to these academies, you get access to the code. And then we'll go through all this stuff that we'll talk about today in a lot more detail, and you'll get to actually play around with the code, and we'll have more hands-on sort of tutorials. So this is going to be a bit more quick. I'm also quite new to this project. I've only been working on JEDI since about January, and I hadn't written any C++ before that. I apologise if there's any questions on particularly the C++ I'm not able to answer, but I'll do my best. So just in case there's anyone here that's not very familiar with DA, just a quick introduction to the concept, and so we can sort of be on the same page as we're talking about some of these components. So essentially in DA we need to balance information to produce some new best guess of the current atmospheric state, which we'll call X0, which contains the wind, temperature, moisture, maybe aerosols, whatever that you're interested in. And so we have to sort of balance these two pieces of information. So we basically have this previous forecast from say 6 hours ago, and then we have all the So that's our prior. Then we have all these obligations that come in, and we need to sort of balance these two pieces of information, and they have various sort of pros and cons to each of them. So we do that by minimizing a cost function. So here we've written this cost function on the left-hand side of the equation with the d to -1. That's the sort of previous forecast, sort of balanced in some sense by error. And then on the right-hand side with that R matrix is the observations or the departures the observation, the comparison of the observations in the background. So we weight these two pieces of information and we minimize this cost function using this gradient, which is the function at the bottom. So a thing to sort of keep in mind as we try to take on a new approach to DA. Essentially, sort of philosophy behind what we're trying to do is that essentially all sensors, everybody is basically working with something that's quite similar. And the building blocks of this problem are basically the same for everybody. Everybody is basically working with something that's quite similar. And the building blocks of this problem are basically the same for everybody. Particular operators or vectors, the building blocks are different operators on those different vectors and entities. The building blocks are basically very similar to everybody. So we'll start to see why we can. So the JEDI project, the Joint Effort for Data Assimilation and Integration, that's a very collaborative development project between the JCSDA and all of its partners. And basically the central goal is to develop a unified data assimilation. So the biggest difference between JEDI and what's done for GSI is that we will be doing native data from GSI. Essentially, when they went from GSS to FV3-JEDI, the process to DA was actually relatively simple. All they really needed to do was code up something which went from the Q from the Q to the GSI. And the GSI system is actually run basically the same that will run the regular GSI. That's because GSI was some key existing data grid, the geometry, and that's very different from how JEDI is here. We'll be doing everything on the native grid for FV3-JEDI, for example. All of our increment operations actually be on that grid. And we can use that same thing to take that full model, you see the full FV3 platform. And the other big component of this is the so-called unified operator or unified, and that's going to be using the addition and helping with research on existing operations. So sort of through this whole system, the idea is to improve operation and hopefully by the end of the how that's much more possible now. And of course, share basically as much as possible between the different centers without imposing a particular approach. So if you're a center that wants to do a hybrid data assimilation system or a variational data assimilation, you can, using the same system as a center that wants to do a pure ensemble or ENKF or LETKF approach. Everyone can essentially share the same thing. Just a quick note on what the JCSDA is, in case you're not familiar. So this is a multi-agency research center, and its main aim is to basically improve the use of data. Multi-agency collaboration between all divisions of NOAA, or three divisions of NOAA, and the National Weather Service, and NOAA. In addition to that, NASA's Global Modeling and Assimilation Office, which is just down the road from here in Goddard, and also the US Navy and the US Air Force. So the JCSDA is organized by project. So one we're talking about today is JEDI, but also the CRTM is handled by the JCSDA, along with STAR. And then there's SOCA, which is the CI station coupled assimilation system, and even improved observations and the impact of the learning. So actually got a JEDI sort of between all of these projects, all of the other projects are sort of using the JEDI system. So why do we actually need a new approach to DA? So before I start showing you the system, the good reasons to actually try and develop a new system. GSI is actually, no matter what you say about GSI, it's actually a highly refined system, and it's been producing really very good results. Supported operational forecasting now for over motivation of actually doing EDA. One of the problems is you actually can't currently do couple DA with GSI. Like I said, it's a contained system with an atmospheric grid. It's really geared around doing atmospheric analysis on this flat line grid. And to do a fully coupled DA, you would have to basically completely realign the GSI with the ground up anyway. And then it's still really not a common framework. By starting off from scratch or even having a research on it, we can develop a more common framework, and that will give us the ability to do beyond the weekly coupled DA. GSI also scale very well. There's a number of design decisions going into GSI that basically means that it doesn't scale with the increasing cohort. And again, with a lot of it has to be completely redesigned to actually make it more scalable. So this is going to be particularly problematic towards the order of a million for any scale like stack. Whereas if we start from scratch, design a new system, we can actually make much better decisions about it. In fact, it's a JEDI system in itself has perfectly just a model which determines how well things work out. Another big problem is that GSI density is based on now quite outdated coding structure, and that gives it a very steep learning curve. Anybody that's used GSI will know that trying to get your head around what it's doing, there's lots of variables that get shared across the whole system, understanding how the changes might impact software and services and it's definitely not as good as, say, like a system that uses if you showed GSI to something that works for Google, for example, it'd be absolutely sabotaging the quality of the output. And one of the reasons for that is Google wants to employ many ways to prevent people working in very close parallel. They want a code that's very modular and using good coding techniques to make it possible to work with. The fourth point here is assimilation, as I mentioned, is very similar. Everybody basically uses the same block differently. And with this greatly actually be working together and streamlining and improvements we can make beyond just by the framework I think this is a key takeaway point. It's now a point where GSI taking that next step to FV3-JEDI and central to JCSDA, so using these updates. And so there's a big motivation to actually doing something. So essentially there are these what we call grid agnostic JEDI components. Basically, in order to develop JEDI, we need components that can replicate what GSI does. So the first component is the object-oriented prediction system. This is the development was initialized by NOAA and then he bought it in the US and became central for JEDI. And so all of the algorithms basically part of the instructions and memory objects and sort of does all of these operations before implementation. The second part, which is not what we have delivered one of the things that we're going to see. For us, we're going to use UFO. We think that this is kind of like an observation operator. So essentially, all the observation operators will be accurate. Essentially, even at runtime, we'll be able to turn it on. You don't have to recompile your code if you want to make a change or data to operate it out. And so this UFO is all of the sort of model agnostic part of the observation operator. So of course, one part of the observation operator is going to be interpolation from the model grid to the observation location. That's not what UFOs do. This is grid agnostic. This is something that can be shared between any model.
And the third important
component is IODA, which is the Interface to Observation Data Access, and that's basically going to perform all of the I/O required. So it's sort of partners with UFO, and it's going to read and distribute all the observations and do all the I/O, arrange everything, compute statistics and things like that. And we have this wiki page, which you can look at if you're interested in learning a bit more. All the minutes from all of our meetings. We try to keep everything sort of very community-oriented, so that people can sort of see what we're doing and what kind of work's going on. So I recommend having a look at that. And I think these slides will be made available too. Basically, sort of in the repository space, if you like, this is the structure of the system. So we have OOPS in the middle, controlling everything, basically telling all the other components what it needs next in order to complete this minimization process. And then on the left here, you'll see all the different models that could be interfaced to OOPS. So OOPS on its own won't do anything until these models are interfaced, or these model geometry is increased to interface. And then on the right you have all the observations that the UFO might have to be connected to, say, the CRTM, doing right temperature, or CSW, doing the ocean, and then IODA, which is going to handle sort of all the statistics, the I/O for the observations. Okay, so this is part 2 of the talk now. So this is talking about the OOPS part of the system, and then also going into a little bit about philosophy, if you like, of object-oriented programming. So the first part is the problem complexity. So the expectations of society, the better weather, and related forecasts are pushing us to account for more of the Earth system. So science and its models progress in a number of areas. We heard all about this morning. The atmosphere, land surface, ocean, sea ice, rain, threat composition, even space weather. And each model is obviously becoming more and more complex as the science progresses. And more and more coupled as well to account for the interactions between all the different aspects. So on the left-hand side here, you can sort of see a bit of a schematic to perhaps how data assimilation development progressed in the past. So for example, the atmosphere has a 40-bar algorithm, PSI, say, or some other system depending on the center. And then in a different building even, maybe a different country, someone's developing CI, and they're developing their own DA system, basically replicating a lot of the same thing in a different code base. And then someone else is doing the ocean, they're doing something else, someone else is doing waves, land surface, whatever. The idea basically behind this whole project is to bring this all together under one sort of umbrella and have essentially completely generic DA algorithms. You don't really need to know anything about these different systems. Rather than everyone developing their own minimization algorithms, don't mean everybody has the same minimization algorithms and everyone has access to the same algorithms. And these algorithms themselves have been becoming very complicated. So there's massively more observations used now. There's different types of observations, there's different minimizations and preconditioning options now. There's observation bias correction, sophisticated tangent linear and adjoint models, maybe for the forecast model, but also for the observation operators. More and more sophistication in CRTM, for example, are very sophisticated variance models for doing the background error covariance. Non-linear balancers are included now. ECMWS has a wavelet covariance. And all these things are still being improved, in fact, and developed. For example, the weak constraint simulation is still very much under development. The right scheme is hopefully being added together. It's very important to sort of bring these things together and sort of give everybody, share these things between everybody, and as new capabilities come online, and sort of filter that down to everyone. The algorithms are also hybrid now, which adds another level of complexity. Ensemble data assimilation systems, and these sort of EM bar systems where you're reading a whole ensemble and computing statistics on it, and the ENKF, for example. There's all kinds of ways to initialize these ensemble forecasts, and then there's these variation DA systems like used by ECMWS and here at NSEP. So data simulation systems actually become so complex that comparing all these options now is almost impossible, especially with everybody developing completely independently from each other.
Another thing that we want
our systems to have, as I mentioned, is scalability.
From Wikipedia
here, scalability is the ability of a system, network, or process to handle a growing amount of work in a capable manner,
or its ability to be
enlarged to accommodate that growth. So this definitely applies to sort of running on an increasingly large number of processes, and that's something that we often think about a lot in science. Second to that, it also applies to the number of code units, so the number of actual modules, for example, different observation operators, and it also applies to the number of developers and making sure that we have code that sort of scales in these three distinct ways is crucial.
So the OOPS
approach
that should be
flexible is the first sort of thing that we want to make sure our system is. It should be easy to modify the system, add new science, add new functionality, add better scalability.
A requirement
a change to one aspect should not imply changes all over the place. For example, we should have no code duplication, and that means the same modification is required in many places. It's also difficult to find where to make those changes, and it leads to a lot of bugs.
There can be no global
variables. This is something that you see a lot in something like a system like GSI has these module level variables that can pass even between different modules.
You could change
that variable in a particular part of the code, and you could have completely unforeseen consequences and break everything out.
One thing that
people struggle with when they first see code like we have in OOPS and in JEDI. It's kind of a bit different from, say, full-time code where everything's quite linear and it's very easy to sort of follow the path, a logical path through the code. It looks a bit like the code is sort of discontinuous and sort of jumps all over the place. But it's important to not think of it in those terms, think about it in terms of locality. The module that you're working on, the particular code segment that you're working on is local.
You make a change.
And so if you make a change there, it should be sort of local to that part of the code.
The next thing is
it should be reliable. So obviously the code should run without crashing, hopefully. But there are additional aspects of reliability which are application dependent.
Complex
system, the code must do what the user thinks it does.
Seems obvious.
Actually, many experiments are wasted, so that's not always the case.
And
the code must run with the user's applied value or report. So if you sort of miss the value out, you shouldn't just make an assumption about what that value should be and carry on. It's always important to remember that a control report with a clear error message is not a crash. It actually saves computer and user time. This is crucial. And there's going to be lots of testing in the system to make it reliable. So we have internal consistency and correctness tests. Did it produce the correct forecast? Did the constructor actually work without crashing? There's lots of testing that needs to go on, and we need mechanisms to run all those tests very easily. And actually, we'll have tests that run automatically. So essentially, if you want to make a change to the code, so you've added a new observation operator, for example, as soon as you try to merge that, you can click a button to say, okay, I'm ready to merge my code into the central repository. Essentially, that's going to trigger that as automatic test. Probably say on like the Amazon web service, run basically a whole bunch of regression tests on that machine, and the code reviewers aren't even going to see your request until all of those tests. And that's again something that's very standard for a company. Very standard for a company, say like Google or Amazon or really any sort of tech-minded company. And the system should be very modular. So the weather forecasting problems can be broken into manageable pieces. There's data assimilation or ensemble prediction. And that can be described without knowing any specifics of a particular model or set of observations. The minimization algorithms can be written without knowing the details of these matrices and vectors. So for example, we have that B matrix at the start, that's part of our algorithm. The rest of the algorithm doesn't need to know how you solve that B. You're not representing that B some sort of model, it's your choice of that model. It shouldn't affect the rest of the minimization.
The development of the model.
The development of the model, so for example, the dynamical core should not require any knowledge of the DA algorithm. It has to be completely independent. Dynamical cores often might have to be developed knowing that DA is taking place. Like for example, you use staggered variables in dynamical cores, and otherwise the computational modes that get cited by the DA. So they need to know that there's DA, but they shouldn't need to know whether you're doing 4D bar, 3D bar, or whatever.
Separation of
concerns is crucial. So all aspects of the system exist. The scientists focus on one aspect at a time. So if you're having, say, a new observation, you shouldn't need to know anything about, you shouldn't need to know at least anything about other parts. You shouldn't even need to know how that data is read from file or managed in a database. And then different concepts should be treated in different parts of the code. Just because you're using a full-track module doesn't mean that your code will actually be modular. There'll often be modules that do lots of different things, and it's not really properly modular. So also developing, making sure that everything is actually properly modular. Using object-oriented programming, which gives us a very flexible, reliable, efficient, readable, and modular code. Readability of the code improves start efficiency, which is actually as important as computational efficiency, but of course much harder to measure. Modularity improves start scalability. If you have a very modular code, you can have lots of people working on their own thing at the same time. Again, that's as important as computational scalability, but again, more difficult to measure. Just as important, and this is not specific to a particular model that has emerged in the software industry to answer these needs are called generic and object-oriented programming. There's a wide variety of the use of the kinds of tools that we're bringing into JEDI. It's not specific to the scientific problem that we're predicting well, let's say. It's also important to remember that as good as object-oriented programming is, and as useful as it is, it doesn't solve scientific problem. So it's a more powerful way perhaps to instruct the computer in a certain way or tell it what you want to do, but it in itself doesn't solve the problem. This is actually raised more doing infrastructure. Doing infrastructure makes it easier, but it doesn't actually do the science itself. The idea is to try and make it easier to do the science. So what is data simulation? Talked about at the beginning, but finding the best estimate or analysis of the state of the atmosphere or some system of interest, given a previous estimate of the state, the background, and recent observation. There are different properties to these different components. So the state properties might have an input and an output. It could be processed. We need to access the values within the state. We need to move forward in time using the model. We might need to copy and assign that state. Observations have their own set of properties. They have input and output also. They also have the ability to simulate observations from a state. That's your observation operator and copying the time. We don't need to know how these operations are actually performed to build our DA system. This is our cross function again. We have cross function, we have increments. This is another component of the system. Now we need basic linear algebra operators, multiplying of vectors and matrices, doing a dot product, for example. We need to evolve forward in time linearly and backwards with the adjoint. We need to compute difference between states and different components. So these different components sort of have different methods or things that need to have that sort of object. This is that sort of object-oriented structure. Departures from the observations. They have to have basic linear algebra operations as well. Compute the difference between observations and observations. Compute linear variations, the linearized observation operator, and output the diagnostics. We have covariance matrices, which have their own methods required. And there's 40 bar problems. Basically, the algorithm to solve it can be described actually with a very limited number of sort of entities or building blocks. So the 4 vectors, essentially 3 covariance matrices. If you're doing weak constraints, right now it's just these B and R matrices at the beginning that we mentioned at the beginning. There's 2 operators, M, which is basically the forecast model, and then tangent linear adjoint. which you don't need if you're not doing 40 bar, by the way. And then there's 8, the non-linear observation operator, and then it's TLM.
And essentially all data assimilation
schemes manipulate these same limited number of
as we're designing the system,
it's important to make sure they're reusable, so that they can be built. New systems can be built that we haven't thought of yet. As long as they use these building blocks, they can be used.
So OOPS has a very
abstract design, independent of the model and physical system, flexible, so that
someone asking a question? So the models don't know. The high-level algorithm currently being run. All actions are driven by the top input and output. All data input and output. Model interfaces must be general enough to get detailed enough to be able to perform the required actions. Some of the design features that we try to account for. Currently, OOPS stops the level of the calls to the forecast models. So the forecast model kind of exists separately, as well as the observation operators, but you could keep applying this principle further down if you wanted to. This gives a sort of schematic. So this gives a sort of schematic of this design and the separation. Essentially, in the top level here, we have a bunch of applications that we might want to use from the JEDI system. So, for example, run a forecast, maybe do a 4D bar, data assimilation, do an EAKF data assimilation, maybe a particle filter, and these are completely generic, and they're all written in C++. And essentially they all pull from these abstract building blocks. So for example, the state, the model state, for example, the model itself, the show variance, the observation. So for example, if you wanted to run a forecast, you would pull from the state and the model building blocks. And somewhere within those building blocks are methods that you would need to run a forecast. So for example, read the state, set the model. That would be your forecast. They're classes. So the green blocks here are classes. A particular model would be an object at that time. Because they're generic, they don't do anything on their own, so then you have to have a model with the orange part at the bottom, and they would actually implement these sort of abstract building blocks. These are the sort of use cases from these applications, and then this is the actual implementation. And these abstract interfaces are essentially the most important aspects of design. This is JEDI, OOPS or JEDI, kind of box, and note that OOPS is independent of the model being implemented. So that whole sort of top box there would compile before the model is even done. Often there's nothing to compile. Headers. So that we have state observation interactions that we have to take account for. So we've got two classes that make the link between the model and the observation spaces. That's the location class and the model at location. The computation of observation equivalent is done by a post processor. So in C++, you have these sort of post processors. You ask the observations for a list of locations at the current time, and then you ask the state for the model. You basically have the model give it states at those observations. So it'd be done as a post processor to running the model. These can be performed on the fly or in finalized. And then we want to save memory versus load balance. And then C++ uses trait basically to provide the sort of overwriting objects or classes. For the cost function, there's various ways you could design the cost function. The one perhaps naive approach is to have one object for each term of the cost function. And then compute each term or gradient and add them together. The problem is you then end up running the model too many times. That becomes expensive. Another approach would be to actually run the model once, store the whole 4D state, then compute each term or gradient and add them together. The problem is that takes too much memory. So the approach that we're taking in terms of designing these cost functions is to run the model once, compute each term or gradient on the fly, so that the post processor can think, and then add the terms have one class each term.
You have one class each term.
I'll get into a bit more detail about what these classes are and sort of what object-oriented programming is in depth. And then you call these methods on the fly while
on each object on the fly while the model is running.
And then it keeps everything in memory.
And then it keeps everything in memory.
At the end, in the
finalized stage, you add everything.
Probably quite a lot of detail.
I think I'll skip that. No. That's the grade is just a cost function itself. So you might use automatic differentiation to develop the operators. Once that's going to give you the grade, just a cost function. Yeah.
So if you move from GSI
to JEDI, the main idea for us is to basically keep the computational code and reuse the existing code and reuse them in a redesigned flexible structure. There's sort of two approaches to this. You can either do a top-down or so-called top-down or bottom-up approach. It's on the top, which is
modern and flexible structure, and this is going to be done mostly in C++. If we were doing it from the bottom up, we sort of progressively create self-contained units of the Fortran code, the GSI code, or you can sort of put the two together, which is really kind of what we're doing. So we're creating an infrastructure on top from C++, and we'll basically take the parts of the GSI code that we can, plug them into the when we're doing a sort of bottom-up approach that we ran into, ends up doing lots of changes, sometimes it's implementing, sometimes and from a Fortran point of view, what the C++ code is going to have is no global variables and controlled by interfaces. So you can't have like a lot of used variables from module within your subroutine. Everything has to be passed by arguments. It could be derived types to kind of group things. Everything has to sort of be passed around. That's how you keep everything kind of local. Yeah. You wouldn't use an include mostly if you can help you use an include variable. Use it to get something. If you have a variable that you can use as different modules, and then you change it somewhere, you've lost the encapsulation. So it's much better to have that thing down. You can secure it right, like you can have one that so the object-oriented layer develops a simple model. It's not just a proof of concept, it's an important aspect of the system. It's actually the same code that you could drive the application. If you're developing a new minimization algorithm, you minimization structure somewhere, and you want to test things in your IL95 model, for example, or essentially touching using the same code. It's different from GSI, where because you have a specific grid, what you do for the toy model is sort of completely separate from what GSI is. It gives you a nicer basis for what it's like. So we talked a little bit about sort of these building blocks. What we're talking about there is sort of classes and objects. So we'll talk a little bit more detail about what we really mean by an object. An object is what we mean by an object for us. It contains things that matter. So if you're familiar with the object-oriented Fortran, if you're familiar with the types, you might have a bunch of variables grouped together in type, or even have levels of them. And then in addition to that, you can have these base classes. So here's just like a sort of really simple example. So the base class here is plain, and then you inherit from that base class, and then create different sort of subclasses of that. So for example, Boeing and Airbus, the two subclasses of plane, which means they might share some similar methods. And then objects are specific versions of those classes. So Boeing makes 747, but then that class might have something very specific about it. The data part of the class is most of the time private ensures isolation. That means if you've got a particular aspect of data from that object, it shouldn't be visible sort of outside of methods that are included in that particular object. So that's basically like preventing people from using the variable somewhere else in the code. And then these methods that exist within these objects, so I think most of the time in Fortran, when people do derived types, it's just a set of variables that have been grouped. You can use methods in those derived types, but you don't see it so often. C++, it's much more common to sort of have the methods be part of those objects. So, for example, a method in our example here, maybe it would be like return number of engines, for example, and then each object we have will return that private piece of data using that method. And these methods can be private or public, or protected in that. And the idea is the interface stage, the implementation stage. The way you call a particular method will be the same for all the object or claim stage. But the implementation would be different. So inheritance basically is the idea of having a data class which might have its own methods, and then if another class inherits from that class, then it can also add its own methods and data in private standards, and it can also actually specialize in C++. You can use virtual methods, which means that essentially it means anything in the and base classes are very useful for categorizing common code classes and codes. IODA, for example, you can see how almost all visualizations now focus on a few methods in common, and classes that happen everybody inherits classes happen everybody expected. And it's very common with objects. And it's very common with objects between classes and and use a lot of the time use a lot of time mark pointers, memory mark pointers, or then really create an object, but then you create an object and then use somewhere. But it tracks all the cases until those objects are nullified. Until those pointers are nullified, you actually can't see anything an object, which prevents memory leak. One note quickly on inheritance warning, that we try to avoid very deep inheritance here. We shouldn't have base classes tends to be very inefficient and also simpler ways of problem composition, using composition, like overload the functions to do what you need as opposed to creating. They also introduce a lot of coupling, which is not a good loop. So the deepest inheritance is two levels. I want just to say that an object anywhere an object is expected. Here's an inheritance example. Top tier is our base class. Which is called a variance matrix. Methods to it. It has three variance matrix here. A variance matrix between the domain itself, between the structure. That's where that particular object is created. The geometry, two arguments, the geometry of the model, the configuration, and as well as the configuration, which is the name list or input parameters from the user. Tilde in C++ is the structure. That's where you allocate the object. You never actually have to call that. It's called automatically once something goes down the scope. We have a method here called multiply, an increment, and that gives an increment, and then gives another increment that. Virtual, which means it's virtual, meaning it doesn't do anything until a subclass is there. So you put something there. So here's two subclasses of the actual base class. Actual covariance, and colon means that it inherits from its base class. Instead of having virtual, it's a instead of having virtual, this is where the actual method is going to be implemented. So you can see here we've got two different ways of computing the background error covariance, spectral covariance or wavelet covariance, and their multiply methods below are going to be very different. So if you have spectral covariance, you implement the spectral covariance, and you always want to be calling this method here. So that's where sort of inheritance makes sense. There are also instances where inheritance doesn't make sense. You could think of having, say, a state, an ocean state, and then an atmosphere state. So the model, the base class being the model, has a forecast state. You can inherit that forecast from model and have an ocean model and an atmosphere model. That's not a very good use of inheritance, really, because there's nothing really fundamentally different about the forecast for an ocean model and an atmosphere model. The interface is the same, basically doing the same thing. Of course, there is a different model, but it's a different state. There's nothing sort of different about what that inheritance really is. So inheritance is not for everything. So this is one of the really powerful things about C++ compared to Fortran, and this is presented in a kind of simplified example, maybe not a very good example, but it's actually a sort of built-in function. So basically you can do generic programming in Fortran. So here's an example where you have a function that computes the minimum. So you can create this procedure, min-int or min-real. So basically it's going to call whichever function it thinks it needs to based on the input. If you provide integers, it's going to call min-int. If you provide real, it's going to call min-real. Problem is that code is actually repeated. So you have to basically type the same thing twice just to account for the fact that the inputs could be different. In C++, it's a lot more simple. In C++, it's a lot more simple because you can use a template. So rather than having to write this all this code twice, the compiler for C++ is going to basically figure out whether or not the inputs are real or integer. That means much more compact code, has much less chance of writing a bug. So this is kind of a simple example. The advantage actually becomes obvious when you sort of look at something much more complicated, like a cost function, say the 40-bar cost function. And here, instead of it being sort of integer or real, it's going to be FV3 model or Navy model. You can actually template an entire model. This is also called duck typing in Python. There's nothing, or at least what you can do in Fortran is very messy. So there's really no templating in Fortran, and there's no intention to actually bring templating in either. You can do something a bit messy with include statements, but it really doesn't work. And then there's this trait function, which is where you basically overwrite the here we have the sort of generic geometry object, and then we're overwriting it with our own version. So QG is the model, and then within QG we've implemented our own sort of geometry. Essentially, when you compile this geometry, this QG model, it's going to essentially overload all those functions with its own versions coming from this trait. Just some general comments. One class equals one responsibility, and the purpose of the class should fit in one simple sentence. Interfaces should be easy to use correctly and difficult to use incorrectly, and they should make sense for somebody who knows the domain. And just to note the sort of evolution of programming over the last 20 years. Basically, each time we bring a new sort of programming paradigm in, it removes the most common sorts of bugs from the previous one. So we sort of way back started with an unstructured code, which has go-to statements. That's gotten rid of by introducing procedural code. That was one of the biggest sources of bugs, that go-to statement. That introduced a lot of if statements, and object orientation sort of takes away those if statements. So again, reduces the number of bugs. That's sort of where we are now. And then in the future, you can actually remove variables by going for sort of more functional programming, more like, say, Python or some of the Haskell programming programming language. And just as a sort of interesting aside, John Backus here was in 1977. He was actually awarded the Turing Prize for inventing Fortran, and what was actually considered his apology for doing so, for inventing Fortran. He used the lecture that he was allowed to give from winning to actually basically say, hey, you got the wrong person, and we should be using functional programming languages instead, and then he spent the rest of his career actually developing these languages. So it's a kind of interesting. Yeah. Essentially when they first started writing Fortran had no sort of object-oriented capabilities. That was part of the main reason. But the main reason is that, there's two things that Fortran doesn't have is the templating, so its ability to kind of write code once, and then in that simple example, finding the minimum between two numbers, it's not no big deal for us. What we want to do is avoid writing that minimization algorithm for every particular geometry that comes along. We want that thing to be completely generic, and it's just very difficult to do that in Fortran. Be very messy. It might be that as Fortran evolves, and things come along. But at the time it was written, that we put together C++ as the only. I think there's another sort of aside to this as well, which is that your average graduate now doesn't know Fortran, and so having something written in C++, you get better people, and we've already found that we're able to just hire way brighter people to come and work on the project because they come in and they can get going a lot quicker, and there's things that they can do. I think that's enough to think about. Central to this whole thing is these interface classes. So we're moving into part 3 of the talk now, which is the model interfacing. So I'll talk about this FV3-JEDI system. So this is basically where we actually get the system to do something useful for us, rather than just being completely generic. So basically all these sort of model or observation specific classes that we've talked about are wrapped into what we call an interface class. And using not strictly necessary to do that. There are other ways to do it. For example, by using batteries. It's a very convenient way to do things, and it sort of keeps everything nice and visible. And to use batteries, it kind of hides things a little bit. So and every interface contains called smart pointers, and C++ smart pointers track whether an object is basically used or not. It doesn't let it go completely allocated until it's completely out of scope. And these interface layers can basically do all kinds of things, but you can sort of add layers on top of them which do things like trace execution and also trace execution to debugging. And if you're interested, once you have access to the code, this is the directory where you find these classes. So this is something. Here's an example. So this is something that you can see. Essentially, we have a template here, and then type in a model. So basically, until we give it the trait, this isn't really going to do anything. What you just need to provide here is, so here's a method called getValues. So you're just basically defining the interface. You can have multiple versions of getValues with different interfaces if you want. The only thing you have to do in the interface class is create the interfaces that you're going to use. So here basically we're passing in the getValues here is going to basically return the model state at the observation location. So it's receiving the following objects, location, which is the graph line of the observation, say, the variables. So if you're observing potential temperature, that would be a variable, and then the thing that gets given back is geoval. So this const in C++ is like intent location in Fortran wouldn't be changed, but the locations and variables wouldn't be changed by that. And then here at the bottom, the scope pointer, smart pointer. This is the smart pointer, which basically tracks whether or not when you've created this object, it's actually still in scope or not. So here's an example of that method. The interface for that method. The interface for that method is where the class. This is like a type beforehand, I guess. And this is where you actually have the subroutine. So again, it has a template to it, and it's part of the state. Again, you have it, and then all we're doing is the interface here. And then all we're doing is basically pointing to itself. So this really doesn't do anything. It's just basically defining all the interfaces. And then later on, we can write something in the actual interface to write something in the actual model that actually does the thing we need. But right now, it's just completely generic. So here the model space interface. So basically, if we want to implement our model of FV3, these are the different classes that we need to think about and actually populate the methods for. So we need the geometry of the model, so the cube sphere grid, for example. We need the state, so UV, T, Q, etc. We need the increment as well. So that's basically the thing that our analysis increment that we're aiming for. The model itself, so FV3-JEDI, we need to actually have a way of calling that model. The linear version of it, so the TLM and adjoint, we want to do 4D error. We need our background error covariance matrices, localization for those as well. And then we have a number of these auxiliary methods as well, which we don't currently use. So here's the OOPS version of the geometry class. So basically, we have sort of starts here and ends here. Inheriting two methods here, principal and object counter, which is just a code profiling essentially. And then this is our trait or template here. So basically this model is going to be overwritten with whatever we pass in. Then we have a bunch of public subroutines. Main one here is the constructor. So anything that's just called geometry is a constructor. So there's essentially two methods for doing the constructor here. One which takes as input the configuration, so that's a user input, maybe it's telling it the number of grid points that you need. And then one which is where it takes as input another geometry. So that would be where you copy one geometry from the other. And then this one is saying it's a pointer. And then the field here again is a structure, but we deallocate all the geometry. And this method wouldn't be called until the object basically goes out of scope. The state, there's a bit more. We have to think about. There's a bit more that we have to think about implementing. So again, we just have constructors, a few more flavors of constructor here. This is a copy, so basically the operator equals. The one thing you can do is actually overload regular equals plus minus divide with one actual object. So you can say like one object equals another. Get values, which is the one we talked about, where we have to interpolate the state to the observation location, for example. Read and write, compute the norm of the state, and copy the geometry. The increment class has even more. Hopefully you can read this for a bit more. Again, constructors, destructor, or deallocate, create, delete, and then now we have interfacing, and then now we have get values TL and get values AD, because we're working on the increment rather than the actual state. The difference between two increments, here we're overloading these different operations, so equals A plus B, A equals A plus B, A equals A minus A. If you write these are different sort of, so if you write object equals object, it's going to call this method here. Linear algebra and dot product. And then linear algebra and dot product, share product, randomize the increment for initializing it, and then also read and write. What we also need to be able to do is actually call the model itself, so that we can do, for example, alpha loop and all these are. You can sort of design the model in this way, where it's done in 3 steps. There's a setup, then a time step, basically set the model by one time step. So one of the things that will be different with JEDI versus TSI is that you'll actually have to be able to call sort of one time step of the model from within JEDI. And then typically there's some cleanup at the end, and that's set up actually. So these are the 3 methods that we have to implement. So this model set is going to have to call, say, FV3-GFS for one broken up into sort of a setup can be broken up into one sort of a trait that you would do once versus an initialize, which would be something you do right before you call the model, like only at the first time step. So often like a variable change or something that you have to do every time the model is called, but maybe allocate all the memory only at the start, and then in fact you can add the bridge trait as well. So here we have something that's a bit more interesting maybe. So that again the class this model, this is just from OOPS, but generic still. And then in public here we have this method forecast, and then in private we have these four methods here. So these correspond to these four methods here. We have initialize, set, finalize, delete, print, and then delete is really essentially these are private, so there's no need for these methods to be visible sort of outside of that object. So the only thing that needs to be visible is that the forecast which does all of them together. So here's a sort of example of that forecast method. Receive the state, an auxiliary model, the sort of length that it needs to run for, and then the post-processor, that's if we want to compute, say, h of x or something like that, we're calling these, and within this we're calling these private methods of initialize, post-processing on initialize, and then setting the model, and then finalizing the model. Tangent linear and adjoint. Tangent linear and adjoint. So again, there's forecast CL and AD. And then the other thing you have to do is set the trajectory. Basically, like run the model once through and set in memory the thing you're linearizing about. And again, you can sort of break this up into some private methods. There's an error covariance class. This main thing that this needs to have is multiply and inverse multiply. Basically, multiplying a vector by that matrix B. Again, it knows nothing about the B. That's up to you how you want to implement that. So all these interface classes now need to be turned into something useful. So OOPS is essentially just a collection of classes, and they're just often just header files, so they're not even compiled until you actually build an application. So for example, we have a method for propagating a model time step. So that method really doesn't contain anything at the moment. It doesn't know anything about the model. It's completely generic. And then once we actually make an application that forecasts, then it will actually get included and compiled, and the traits will come in, and your template that. So the user actually has to populate all the methods required. By OOPS to perform the DA for their particular model. And there's a couple of examples that come with the system. There's a QG model included, and there's a Lorenz 95 model. So you can see how these methods are implemented for a particular model, and then copy them for the model that you're working with. And then through the power of these templates, the minimization algorithm provided by OOPS can be used by the model. Basically, everything that you've done in OOPS is generic, and then you implement these. So the general structure of a particular component for the system. So the state is one of the components we talked about at the beginning. So the state has So the state has, like a read and write. Get values. I think it has a few other methods. Get values and then a few other methods. So in OOPS, there's this generic state.h, which doesn't do anything. And then for our system, so we've implemented, say, a state FV3-JEDI, which you can name it however you want. And then there's a header file, which basically now contains all those same interfaces, but now with the back templating. Then there's a CC file, which is the also C++, which is what can actually call the method and then set up the object. And then there's a sort of complementary Fortran side. This is what generally C++ looks like with a header and then a sort of function file or CC file. There's a complementary Fortran header file, which is going to contain all the interfacing between C++ and Fortran. And then here is the sort of regular file that we're used to working with. Say FV3-JEDI in green is generic. So in green here is generic, and that's how you communicate with application, and that's how you communicate to the application. And then in blue here is our C++ version. And then because our model is written in Fortran, we have an extra step where we interface with the Fortran. Unless you want to develop a new minimization algorithm or change something in OOP, you're really never going to have to work with these files really. Once you've interfaced everything and set it up for the first time, you basically will work in the orange box here. If you want to add a new observation, you're going to just change the get value function with it. It's trying to sort of separation of concern. Here's an example for model.h. This is setting the model by one time step. So this is the part from OOP, the interface. So you see the template here. And you've got this step function to set it by one time step. But all it really does is point to itself with the full interface. So then there's the sort of complementary model.cc. So then there's the sort of complementary model.cc in FV3-JEDI. This contains a bit more. You see that the interface now is the same. Instead of this state underscore, we have a state FV3-JEDI. And then we're passing in xx, which is our state. And now what we're seeing is, we have some debug information that gets printed. There's log debug. So basically there's an environment variable that can be set on or off to produce the output if you want it. And then you'll see we're actually calling a subroutine. This is model propagate. And then we use this underscore F90 to show that we're moving from C++ to Fortran. Here we're just changing the valid time. So valid time is some data that lives in this object xx, which is our state, and we're just adding the time step to the valid time. So we're setting that valid forwarding time. And this Fortran.h, we actually get the binding. So what we do is we have all these integers that actually get passed around, which are essentially keys. So if you look back here in the C++, you'll see that rather than passing xx itself down or beyond itself down, you have this method called qFortran. And this key here to this other argument, and then for the xx we also have a qFortran. So all these different sort of JEDI objects contain a method called qFortran, and what essentially ends up being passed down to the Fortran is just an integer. You don't actually pass, so you have a model geometry, that thing never gets passed up to C++, because that becomes quite a headache and you have to kind of track a lot of pointers and there's a lot of potential bugs. The way this is handled is by using keys, these Fortran keys, and I will go into the details a bit more of how that all works in a second. Rather than it just being a regular integer, you created a new integer called F90 model, and that basically means you don't accidentally pass a geometry where you actually enter the model, because they're both integers. So that was a cause of a compile failure type because, and then there's a different external type that and then there's this external C which provides the binding here. So here's the Fortran. So what basically comes in to this, now we use this C underscore to show that it comes from C++. And here's our actual Fortran subroutine. So what we've received here is these three keys. One for the geometry, one for the state, and one for the model, which is binding, because we're in model. And then basically binding, we have to do is convert those integers. Basically what we have to do is convert those integers into actual objects. Essentially there's sort of like two versions of every object, one in the Fortran and one in C++. And then there are these methods, registry, which retrieves here, this registry, which retrieves the object using the integer. And I'll go into the details a little bit of that. But ultimately what you get down to is this full model propagate, and then below that is just Fortran. And then note if you're working in that subroutine, like you're changing the model or changing something about the model, you don't need to know anything about any of the C++ in order to do that. And then you need to, once you've kind of populated all these different methods, you have to build an application. So here's typical application for doing variational data assimilation.
All these C++ applications have
so all these C++ applications have the same sort of structure. They have int main, basically it's going to return zeros for a successful run,
with some error code,
one or some other number with some error code if not.
or any technical setup.
There's a run object for any technical setup. When you see, say, FV3-JEDI : like this, it basically means that FV3-JEDI is a namespace, and then run FV3-JEDI is some class, probably, and then run here is some method from that class.
Coming in here is basically a bunch of
a bunch of arguments or a name list. So, for example, everything might have a YAML file for input, and then there's this run method which basically sets everything up. It might sort of like initialize NPI, for example.
Kind of create the application object. So here
you have to create the application object. So here we're from oops we're calling this variational class, and then we're giving it a trait, which is telling us, giving it basically the actual methods that we want to implement, and then the method that we're trying to run is this var or variational DA, and then we basically execute the application, return 0 if we make it that far.
Trait is really the key to everything.
So yeah, this trait thing is really the key to everything, because if you didn't have these traits here, you wouldn't be able to actually template all of those interfaces.
So the models that are currently using the framework,
the models that are using the full JEDI framework, that's OOPS plus UFO plus IODA. So now we have FV3, which is used by designing the NAPA, and GSDL. We're designing the FV3-JEDI system to be used here, and set all the SOCA models at NAPA. There's all the SOCA models, which is MONSIP, Life5, these use bipolar grid, and that's being worked on by the SOCA team here at EMC. NPAS is heavily involved in the project now, and they have about 3 people working on interfacing their icosahedral grid JEDI. The Met Office in the UK has the ELFRIC model, which is a cube sphere finite element system. They have a few people working now on JEDI. Also Neptune, hoping that the Naval Research Lab will start to be working with JEDI soon. They've got people working on it already, I think.
There's a couple of sensors using progress.
And then there's a couple of sensors using just the OOPS part of JEDI, so they don't use UFO and IODA, because they're sort of clearly part of their model. ISS, which is the Eastern WF. UFO kind of lives within the ISS, so they don't actually need that component.
So essentially, kind of give the
broader overview of the way the system is arranged. So essentially down in the bottom here is the sort of model agnostic parts of the system. So OOPS is the part that we talked about. We'll go into some of the details of UFO and IODA in a second. And so this is all the sort of model agnostic parts. So there's nothing known about the model you're working with, and then any of that model is blue part. And then in the model you have to implement all these different examples. So we showed all these different objects or classes. So we showed the examples of the model. So essentially you always start with the geometry, that's the model grid, the layout and processors, that kind of stuff, the lat lines, the different grid points,
typically this is
things like that. And then typically this is going to be coupled to the actual dynamical core of the system. So for FV3, that's both FV3 and SMS. So these are where you actually have the subroutines which create the cube sphere grid.
Then you have
you kind of interface to that. Then you have what we call fields or increment and state. So that's all the methods associated with doing linear algebra or doing IO, things like that. So these things need to know about geometry.
What kind of DA you're doing.
And then depending on what kind of DA you're doing, you're going to have the model itself. You need to actually implement an interface to your full model plus physics. If you want to do 40 bars, the TLM and adjoint that model, you'll have to implement and then you'll have to implement the covariance matrix and localization. So here in the model is where you're actually coupling to the full GOPS or GFS system. And so then you're going to, so basically OOPS is going to send a whole bunch of instructions via these integer keys. So say the increment, it's going to say, okay, now I need increment with a particular key multiplied by a covariance matrix with another key, and then the model will complete that calculation and then tell OOPS that it's done it, and then OOPS will go on to the next part of the minimization process. In the meantime, UFO and IODA are working together and telling the model where the locations of the observations are, and then the model might be doing some sort of interpolation, so an observation location might be converting, maybe the model has potential temperature, but UFO wants virtual temperature, so the model needs to do that conversion, because it's not model agnostic, it can't be done by the UFO, and so it's communicating to UFO these sort of model equivalent values and GEO values. This is just an overview of some of the methods that you need to implement. As I said before, constructors, all the methods for doing DA, like dot products, need to be part of the increment, variable transforms, interpolation, change of resolution. If you're doing different resolution using that absolute, the model needs to be propagated. You need square root B maybe, or even the inverse of square root B. These are all the kind of methods and variables that live in these different objects. These are like different classes or objects, geometry. So here's the geometry, example here. So here's the constructor, calling the setup, delete copy, calls this clone, delete, and there's print some information. Again, in the Fortran, again, as I said before, you get these keys and also config, and then once you're down in the Fortran, this FV init, for example, is an actual subroutine from the FV3 model, which creates the CubeSphere grid, which lives in this FV ATM site, and then you might set up the domain with different processors. Once you're down in this level, everything's basically done in Fortran. So there's this key, which is really the key to it all, because you can't really communicate too much between Fortran and C++. The pointers become very tricky to deal with, and introduce a lot of bugs. So basically we use this thing called linked list. Essentially, the details aren't too important really, it's just worthwhile to know roughly what's being done, because if you come to work with JEDI, you're going to see these keys all over the place. It might be that you have to, if you ever have to change an interface, then you would have to sort of interface with these keys. But essentially, keep track of every object. OOPS is going to basically keep track of every object of a particular type that's created, and that object is going to have essentially a key or an integer associated with it. On the Fortran side, it's also going to create an object, all of these different objects. It's going to have the same key associated with it. There's going to be, for example, if you create a grid, the memory for that grid only exists in the Fortran. It's not going to exist in the C++. C++ just has the keys. Unless your model happens to be C++ keys, I'm pretty sure that everything is going to be in Fortran. Over here, this is this is kind of like our geometry object, but on the Fortran side. So this is type dimensions. So this is just 3 integers which tell us the grid dimensions. Of course, in reality, it'd be much more complicated. And then basically we define this listed type. This is a bit like templating in Fortran, essentially. We have this list of type which is this equivalent to this object. And then we're going to include this linked list thing, and then basically that listed type comes in again over here. This is essentially you have the list. Essentially, you have this list of objects. So they all have. So you might have the tenants and these are the geometry essentially, and it's just going to be this structure here, sort of repeated in a list. And so when you get that key in from C++, you essentially look through the list to retrieve the object, and then change a pointer to that object. And then for the rest of that sort of Fortran subroutine, you're working with that particular object. So it has you might have to initialize your method, and you might have to initialize your linked list and finalize it, and basically add a new object to the list, even a key, get achieves a particular object given a key, and then once something goes out of scope, and C++ tells you to deallocate it, you have something to remove it from the list. Here is where the actual object lives in memory. So here's an example where you're creating a new object. You initialize it. It's not initialized. You add an object using this key that's come in, and then you retrieve that object so you can start working on it. And there's the subroutine which basically does that. The other thing that comes in is not austerity really config. The other thing that comes in is not key config, but this actually is a config. Manage that more easily. The reason we can manage that more easily is because we're never really changing the config in Fortran. It's got intent in, and it's just being read. And then JEDI comes with a bunch of ways of interfacing with this config. So there's a module and subroutines that come through this module that comes with parameters. For example, if your sort of name list has a set of parameters that you run the system with, has a real number in it, you can replace it with the config get ready. The other thing that's crucial as we're developing the system is we use the whole system unit test. So we have the whole system is built with EC build, which is the ECMWS make build program, and we have these unit tests basically any time, as I mentioned before. All these unit tests will have to pass in order for things to be merged. Basically, we create these applications the exact same way. But rather than having oops written here, we have tests. So essentially, every interface test version typically has like some sort of test version of it that can be run basically the same way. It runs basically the same way, but instead of running an application, it's going to run tests on that particular object. So here's just a quick example. Instead of living in oops source, things live in oops test, and we use oops a lot of the time to do these tests. Here's one that we're running on the linear model. The tangent linear is adjoint of the forecast model. There's a bunch of tests that get run, so just checking the constructor didn't fail, doing things like checking that the adjoint dot product test passes, all kinds of different things. So like here's a templated test here, again, the interface has to be implemented in the model too, but basically here it's just basically creating an object and then returning a check on whether the object is created without adding things to the model. That's crucial if you're adding things to the model to keep adding tests as well. And so this second to last part of the talk, we'll talk about UFO and IODA. So this is probably the part that most people will be working with because it's the observation. And that's typically the vast majority of people working on DA are working with observations. So again, there's interface classes. We saw all the interface classes that are associated with the model. This is the one associated with the observations. They have departures, observations, geophysical values at observation locations, the locations themselves, the records, observation state, operator, the linear version, tangent linear, and adjoint, and then the error covariance, the R matrix. I'll skip through some of these. Essentially, what we looked at before, but now there's different methods. So save and read for the observations, creating an observation vector. Something interesting, departures. So dot products that you need for those. It's more like an increment. Inverting them, X plus Y, saving them also, saving certificates. There's the observation space class. Not sure if there's anything that interesting there. Obsector. Most of the same methods. Obsector. So again, most of the same methods this time. These are all the dot products, reading and saving. These are all the methods that would have to be implemented in UFO or IODA. There's the operator class, so this is what most people probably would be working on, like if you're adding a new operator for GCSDA or something, this is where you would be working in this OBS equivalent, most likely in the Fortran, but this is where interface exists. So this is sort of like the model,
then compared to your actual observations.
H of x, which you would then compare to your actual observations, but receiving as its input the geoval, which is again a geophysical value at an observation location. The model having interpolated the variable to the location, the obspector itself, that's the observations that you've read from the file. And then there's usually variables associated with this, so that basically you're telling the model which variables it needs to return. So is it pressure in hectopascals or kilopascals or whatever. Then there's a linear operator class. Now we have here we had an ops equivalent. Now we have an ops equivalent TLM and an ops equivalent AD. But an adjoint has to be implemented for each. And then they also have a set trajectory. So if you, for example, with the CRTM, that's a non-linear model, so you're linearizing about a trajectory, which is handled in that set trash. For the area covariance, a bit like the B matrix, we now have an R matrix, we have a multiply vector by R, or the inverse of R, which are these two methods here. So basically, this is a complicated picture. Yeah, so basically this is a bit of a complicated picture, I think. Blue over here, there's these different components as a state. So in blue over here is the model. The model has a state. Oops is in grey, and that has the variables. So basically, variables of a class of the oops, which basically tell the different components which variables. In yellow here is times at different points. In yellow here is IODA, so IODA handles the IO, the observation is distributes all the observations. And in green is UFO. So for example, IODA is going to create an observation space, which will have probably all the observations and all the locations of the observations. Going to pass that into the probably subclass of observation locations. So the model is going to be told I need a particular set of variables, that might be temperature, and then through IODA it's going to map here, it's going to know which location is lat lon of the observation, and then essentially anything that's model dependent, so interpolation for example gets handled here in the place class, there's a method in there. And that's going to return the values of at the observation location, pass them back to the observation operator, which can very sort of do the calculation of each different component. So it's very sort of separate, each different component can be handled sort of on its own. So here's an example of an observation operator. So this is a conventional, so we're down in the Fortran here. So again, most people would be working sort of at this level. It is, well, this is a linear observation operator, I guess, but it's quote-unquote non-linear, or the non-linear, what would you think the non-linear subroutine? So there's a few things that happen here, a few checks basically, just basically making sure that the different objects, these different classes or objects are consistent with each other. For example, making sure that they all think there's the same number of observations in case something went wrong. And just basically checking. And then UFO comes with the geoval get bar. So the model is basically filled up some derived type with the actual geovals that it has to retrieve, the one that it wants at that time. So here it's getting the pressure from the geoval, doing some checks. And then it's getting the temperature from the geoval, and then getting the actual observations that it might need from IODA. Then it's getting the actual observations that it might need from IODA. So for example, we have to do the conventional radiosondes. So what we have to do is interpolate in the vertical, which we can do on the UFO side. The model agnostic. Its pressure at the observation. We've had the model return its pressure at the observation location. Now we're going to retrieve the pressure from the observation itself. That way we can do the vertical interpolation. That's done in two steps. The first is create the interpolation weight, and then actually apply those weights to do the vertical interpolation. TLM8 adjoint, you have the set trash phase. For the TLM8 adjoint, you have the set trash phase, which basically just does the weight, computing the weight part, and then you have the adjoint version, so now it just has to call the apply adjoint, and here it's already got the weights. from itself. Add a new observation operator. So then when you add a new observation operator, you have to tell it which variables you're working with. So this is an example for GPS RO, and you're telling the model that you need temperature, specific humidity, air pressure, and geopotential height. Example of what those types have to hold. Here's an example of what those types have to hold. Values of the geoval, the model values of the location, number of values, number of observations. And then there's a sort of a wider type which contains a wider type which contains this geoval that contains and then USO bars which contains that's a list of the variables that it needs. So you put it in C++ and then it will automatically populate in Fortran from IODA. So locations comes from IODA. So here's just a 1D example. So we've just got observations for a column, lat, long, and time. This class is completely generic, so you could make a subclass of this that has different locations. So for example, if you wanted to have an observation which is a plane, or even a cone, say under a remote sensing under a satellite, you can easily do that. So it's nice and generic. We're actually still deciding how to handle the observations in IODA. Currently we're using the NC-DIAD tool developed by NASA, and also investigating the use of observation database. Unfortunately it doesn't have a very flexible license, so we're not sure if we'll be able to use that. Here's an example of the get values in the model. Or maybe we have to develop our own version of that. Here's an example of the get values in the model. So basically the option where people will be working is in this Fortran subroutine. This is the tangent linear version. So you receive the geometry, the model state, the field, the locations from IODA, the variables from UFO, and then the geoval, and then trajectory. So you can see it now with this, everything's in Fortran. You don't have to worry about any C++ or anything at that point. Basically, the subroutine has to convert the increment variables to the UFO variables. So if we have T in the increment, and this bar here is telling us how to provide any other variables to do that conversion. Provide any other variables that aren't part of the increment. So for example, surface values of the NCRDM. And then on the adjoint side, actually do the interpolation, and then on the adjoint side, this is later on routine. So you can see here, this is later on in the subroutine, you're sort of looping over the number of variables on the variable, and then you do this select case on the variable names. So temperature we already have. For example, here's temperature, so there's temperature we already have, already our variable, so we do a variable transform, and then we do this generic grid kind of interpolation that uses an unstructured grid interpolation. So that basically is going to the location. So that basically is going to give back this GOM value here, which is going to be our interpolated grid. So the state is ready to be used by UFO. Collaborative tools. So just to finish up, collaborative tools. This is an important component of the JEDI project, because there's so many different components to it, and different parts of the code, Fortran, C++. Everybody's going to be sort of coming in with different expertise, and if you don't, many people won't be working on C++, have a lot of Fortran. It's important to sort of have a lot of nice collaborative tools that help people sort of work together and keep everybody on the same page with all the different expertise. So for example, we're following a particular branching model for the system. So this is the Git flow branching model. These are basically different sort of versions or branches of the repository. So the master branch here on the right continues over here, where you have actual public releases of the software. If you find bugs, then you have the hotfix branch. So you basically name your branch, hotfix / some description of the branch. And then the vast majority of work is done over here on the development branch in yellow. So basically, you might have multiple versions of something you're adding, that you sort of work on, and then eventually once you're happy with it, you actually might sort of create a new release branch in green, and then eventually once you've gone through enough reviews and testing, you actually have a release. So as people are working, every individual person's going to have their own feature branch. So if you're adding, say, the RTM, you would say feature / the RTM, and you would start working on your branch over here in pink, frequently merging back to the, hopefully as you're working, you're sort of frequently merging back to develop. Every time you add one feature, it kind of goes back into develop. Everybody make a pull request, and then onto the development branch, and then eventually everybody's work kind of taps back onto the development branch, and then eventually into the release. Using the same structure. So the idea is to sort of try and keep everybody using the same structure so that it keeps the many branches quite tidy. So you can imagine that there's going to be many hundreds of branches going on once in terms of development gets a bit more rapid. In terms of repositories, the plan is to essentially have a central repository that's community controlled. So no one center will have control over this. It'll probably be housed at JCSDA, but there'll be lots of people that are able to review that code and comment and decide on what sort of makes it into the central repository. And then everything's on GitHub, where you can use forks, basically have the kind of lab-controlled versions of the same code. So for example, EMC will have a forked version of the repository, which they're using for operations maybe. They'll be making their own changes locally, so they'll have their own sort of forked version of this. And then every now and again they'll have feature branches, be adding things, and then every now and again they'll sort of try to request to merge their changes back to the central repository, and then as other people merge and we push and pull, the changes from over here can be benefit all these different benefits. Project methodology is inspired by Agile. So this sort of project methodology is inspired by Agile, and it's very well adapted to distributed teams, people who don't necessarily get to work on the project full time. And it creates a very collaborative environment. So you always have easy access to update source code through GitHub, and then very easy exchange of information using mostly 10 hubs now we're working with, which are sort of issue tracking. So basically anytime a feature branch gets created, there should be a corresponding issue in ZenHub where discussions can be made around that branch while it's active. Once it's merged back into develop, that issue can be closed. Use a very flexible build system. The system is built using CMake, and particularly EC build, which is essentially a set of macros. For CMake, that comes from the ECWS. It's very powerful software that makes it very easy to kind of compile everything and use these sort of C-test versions, keep things. We're doing a lot of documentation. We're doing a lot of documentation. There's a lot of documentation throughout the code using the-oxygen. We're going to have these tutorials like this, regular JEDI academies, more online as well. And then we'll have regular JEDI academies. There'll be one in November, which will encourage you to attend. It'll be a bit slower paced than this, but you'll have a bit more of a chance to sort of see the things working as before moving on to the next one. A much nicer way to kind of see the code and get a better understanding of it. I could do that on Instructor and working practices. So in terms of infrastructure and working practices, we're actually looking at continuous integration and testing. This is testing framework which is in work now. That's what I mentioned before about every time you make a pull request, essentially launch an instance of Amazon, a cloud machine where it will basically launch all these integration tests, and your pull request will essentially fail at that point and the release then will start. We're also working on portability, so that test will also launch on several types of compilers. So one of the big things we're making sure is from the ground up, everything runs with three compilers, so G, Fortran and GCC, as well as Intel for NASA and NOAA, which means that people can run in their own systems. We're also working hard on keeping things in containers. So actually, at the most recent JEDI Academy, I think almost everyone there is running on Singularity. That basically means you can get your personal laptop and run a 3D bar of the core FV3-GFS system, and you'll be up and running within an hour. The good thing about these containers is that basically come with pre-installed libraries. It's not like you don't have to concern yourself with building NPI or building NFS or anything like that. It's all pre-installed, and it uses free compilers like Fortran so that everybody can run very easily. It's very good for sort of student tests. We also enforce coding norms as well. We also enforce coding norms. So like one of the regression tests is that you abide by a set of coding norms that are actually published by Google, and again, if you've got white space at the end of the line, you won't be able to submit your code. It also enforces the correctness and efficiency. And these kinds of, I'm not sure if we're going to enforce it. I'm not sure if we're going to enforce it, but it will probably be enforced through the code review. And all the documentation will be created automatically. And then on the website, so lots of people will say if you haven't read the docs, docs again, if you haven't documented there's one other thing. Okay. So, if you haven't documented your code, it's obvious. Cool. So here's an example of a pull request that's active right now. So here's an example of a pull request that's active right now. So on GitHub, Raoul is wanting to merge the feature branch, feature model factory into develop. So the feature branch that he has, and so it's got 10 commits, so you can use GitHub there, you can look at the files that have been changed, you can look at the commit here, what he's trying to do, and then you'll hopefully have a description here of what he's trying to do, and then further down on this page there could be discussion. And so over here you'll see people that have been assigned to review this change. So in the future, in practice, the fact that this page even appears means that all the regression tests are passed on multiple different compilers. And then these people are really just able to look at the code itself by eye and look and see if there's anything obvious that should be different. They don't have to compile and run everything and make sure that it still works. That sort of already happened. And then once you've looked at the code, you can sort of submit your review. You can just approve it. Things like, you can just approve it. You can ask for changes. You can reject it. You can close the request and so on. And then there'll be discussion and quiz. Sometimes it's quite small and it's quick, and sometimes it's bigger and it might take a week. One of the things that we always say to people who are starting to work with the code is that your requests should be frequent and with incremental changes. So one of the problems that sort of been experienced in the past is that the way people seem to prefer to work is to say download the GSI code and then spend a year working on some new implementation or something, and then they come and they try to merge it back. And the problem is that's an absolute nightmare for the people that are in charge of merging that code, and you'd be encouraged to commit things like keeping standards. They should compile. Actually, you'd be encouraged to commit things that don't work. They should compile things that don't need to work. You should add all the files. For example, if you're adding a new observation operator, you should add all the files and all the interfaces, and then that can be reviewed and added to the code, and it's an easy thing to check. And this is going to be absolutely crucial because, unlike the GSI where things are being sort of developed in a whole group, if your group tends to sort of pull away from the central repository and we don't do this thing, EMCs take no code and we don't hear back from them in 2 years, there's absolutely no way their code will be able to be merged back into the central repository. Which means they lose the benefit of all these other centers' work. So it's going to be crucial that this back and forth push and pull requests is like on the time scale of months or weeks, and that's going to be not years. Helped by this automatic unit testing as well, and that's going to be helped by this automatic unit testing as well. And typically there'll be like 2 or 3 people that can review the code. But here's the ZenHub board. Here's the ZenHub board. This is a ZenHub at the top. Actually, just when you're on GitHub, you just click on the ZenHub at the top. Basically, you'll see all the issues there. Here it is. And then basically you'll see all the issues here. So typically these are associated with some feature branch or some issues being discussed. So then they can be placed in these different pipelines, new issues, high spot, backlog, in progress, sort of like, and then you can assign people to these. It's a bit sort of like social media and typically have. So this is how we sort of manage all the tickets. And then we typically have perhaps like a weekly meeting where we might pick up any particular repository and then and go through any sort of tickets that haven't been haven't had any activity in a while, sort of try to keep on top of this. Everything's built in Singularity. Containers, as I mentioned, everything is built in Singularity. So you can build and run actually FV3-JEDI, you can run 3D bar on your laptop. You don't have to install any libraries or anything, so that really facilitates these code sprints that we do, as well as JEDI Academy. Code sprints is quite an important part of what we've been doing. We've had 5 now in the last year. So basically we bring 10 to 12 people together for maybe 2 or 3 weeks, either here or in Boulder or somewhere else. And essentially all work together on a particular element of the system. Most recently we did have the B-matrix code sprint where we're developing the B-matrix, so we spent 2 weeks. And you can bring people in from sort of operational centres as well as universities, academia, because of using the sort of Singularity, these containers, and get sort of everybody on the same page within the first few hours, and then from there sort of focus on the science for the rest of the 6 weeks. It's a pretty nice way of working. Seems to be working quite well. So yeah, these are the code sprints. The first code sprint that we ever had. We had an NCAR at the Mesa Lab. Nice place to work. The first one was the UFO. We've had 5 now. 2 on the B-matrix, 1 on the UFO, 1 on the marine UFO, and 1 on the GNSS. So basically using software. So the B-matrix, for example, if we are using software called Dump to sort of compute all the correlations. So basically the guys who developed that software came in from France. So basically we had 10 people I think for that one. So we basically actually get to kind of decide all the tasks that need to be done. To actually get to so the goal for that one was to have a working B-matrix of some sort by the end of 2 weeks. So we sort of analyse all the steps that would be required to fulfill that goal, and then basically all kind of break up into smaller teams or individuals that would work on each combat phase really. And then we would kind of come back together every couple of days and make sure everybody's on the same page. So we'd all be sitting around the table like this, constantly discussing problems that we were having, especially when it's a really good way to work actually, and kind of especially when everybody's remote, which is the nature of specifically their involvement. Specifically their involvement at the end. So that's a local. So that's the academy. So that's going to be done quite frequently now. So there's the academy, so that's going to be done quite frequently now, I think, at least for the first few years as the JEDI project starts to take off. And what we'll try to do in the future is, this has been an overview of the whole system. What we'll try to do for the academies in the future is kind of break it up so that people can kind of come in to the parts that they're interested in. Like today we learned all about the OOT system, as well as the other components. So most people probably aren't interested in OOT, they're more interested in the UFO and how they get their observation operations done. So we'll try to sort of have it sort of broken up in a way that facilitates that. And the next one will be November 12th from the previous academy. And so all the slides actually from the previous academy, the one we had in May or June, is on that same wiki. So take a look at that, you'll see it at the bottom. And just an expansion of the slides that you saw as I mentioned today. And just to finish up, so as I mentioned, we had this code sprint in August. So this actually shows the development that we did over August, in a sort of animation of the repositories. So essentially, white lines here are the different repositories. Here's the QG model. So this is just each, I guess, the QG and the source directories. And then each of these circles here represent a particular source code file within the system. And then these are different people. Yannick is JEDI Master. I'm not sure who that is. But you'll see, so this sort of shows the power of these code sprints where we can actually have a lot of people kind of working on a lot of different components at the same time. And this is not just the power of the code sprint, but the power of the fact that this code is very modular and generic, different object orientated, different people working on different components. You can sort of see these different branches, different people working on different components. Here's the FV3-JEDI system, so this is all the model dependent branch down here in the B matrix. And then this big branch down here is OOT, and this is all the sort of generic parts of the code, and then I think MPath and Alfred. So you've got 3 different models being worked on at the same time, all sharing ideas between ourselves about how to do this B matrix. And then down here in OOT is where we're actually implementing all of the infrastructure for doing the B matrix. So, between us and the model side, we'll be saying, okay, well, we all need this same particular calculation to be made. For example, some statistical regression between 2 variables, for example. So then the guy across the table says, oh yeah, we can do that nicely in Bump, we're able to sort of work, so then that gets implemented. So we're able to sort of work in parallel on this quite nicely. So now the system seems to be working quite well. So now it's a case of the FV3-JEDI. So the OOT part of the system is very well matured. The FV3-JEDI part now also. And the majority of the work over the next year or so is going to be sort of IODA and UFO, bringing more observations into the system and sorting out all of the QC and how that's going to be done. We'll obviously be looking at making that part of the system work. We'll obviously be looking for more and more help from NOAA and the different JCSDA partners and anybody else sort of interested in using the JEDI. Thank you very much for coming. The end of the talk. Thank you very much for coming. Any questions? Yeah.
Are they using it as an origin back to Europe?
Yeah. One of the people are using it now from yeah. So one of the people using it as from the AWS action model. So they're using it for their NEMO system, which is their ocean model, and also for IFS. So it's going to be operational essentially this year. It would have been operational essentially this year, but they had to basically have a delay in their operational schedule. They're moving their HTC from the UK to Italy. 2 years delayed, so in 2 years it will be their operational PA system.
How will they be interfacing with change?
Right now we've been working with 2 versions of it. So right now we've been working with 2 versions of it. They have their own version. We've got a 4th version that we're working on. We're currently working, and we're currently working on merging that. And then the idea will be to merge between the 2. So there's nothing formal about how that's done now. It's done using one person at JCSDA and one person using AWS in communication, and making sure that it's the idea is that every few weeks hopefully the same OOT. But yeah, the idea is that, like I said, they will be using the same OOT, but like I said, they don't have the other components.
One thing, so I guess it is very abstract level. One thing, so I guess it is very abstract level. We laid down our concept for data accumulation, our data metrics. But for data accumulation, but for actual data accumulation, how much of that could be used? For example, suppose by your backwards included in some plan, so then if I think that I'm the amount of version, how much of that
depends which parts our model has. So basically, any part
depends which parts our model has.
algorithm.
So basically, any part,
And that
so of
algorithm,
course, there's an algorithm to the ENKS,
you could have that be
and that algorithm in itself is
at some point you're going to have to do
so you could have that be controlled by who.
you might have to implement
At some point, you're going to have to do something that model
does that filter.
so you might have to implement some new method that does that filter for the actual outcome.
It's the same
Some
for
filter somewhere in the model. In terms of the actual algorithm, it's the same for every model.
Yeah, and but in terms of the code acquisition,
So you
anything
that you write in Inc can be used by any model.
Yeah. So anything that you write in OOP can be used by any model. At some point when you're down in the forefront doing something with knowledge of your model for it, that is now specific to you. But we're writing the ENKS into now to follow that algorithm. So once that's in, any model will be able to sort of follow that algorithm. It's just a case of implementing the building blocks.
Yeah, so one thing that's like you can run a forecast with
so one thing that's you can run a forecast with a new completely generic it's just that four set of methods, initialize, set, finalize,
iterate over
create,
and run
initialize,
30 members of the forecast in one
so you can iterate over that and run out 30 members of your forecast in one executable if you want. That's completely generic. And you could do that in OOPS in a day probably. You could implement that interchange and do that. And it would you wouldn't actually have to change anything in the model. You've already implemented one version of that forecast. You're just iterating over it and that'd be completely generic.
The fact that you have to do it is generic.
The fact that you have to do it is generic. Where you actually add, your perturbation with the state. You've made a choice about how to do that. That's something you have to write for each model. But in OOPS, you can create that method as part of the state. We already have that method to add an increment to the state. So what you make that increment is completely up to you. You have to implement that.
So we implemented OOPS was developed by using WS.
So we implemented OOPS was developed by using WS, so they never cared about doing any kind of EN bar. And it took one day to code up the 40 EN bar system in OOPS. What does it actually work at that point? Because you have to implement something to the model. To actually build the algorithm was like a day of work. If you compare that to, say, GSI, you're talking about weeks of work to make the algorithm work.
That same principle is doing, say,
that separation is concerned. That same principle is doing, say, the ENKS. Writing the algorithm is probably half a day.
How do I determine?
But then you obviously have to implement some science, don't you, right? How do I determine my model?
You don't need to worry about any of the other.
But you as a scientist who knows about that, you don't need to worry about any of the other components. Someone else has already done that.
Separating this concern.
And that's the whole point, really.
Scientists, C++.
Set the separation this concern.
Scientists, how computer
Scientists, C++, they're going to work on it. Scientists, how to interpret their models to get the best spread. They work to try to do that independently.
You've got to know all about GSI.
That's the whole idea, whereas if you try to do that in GSI, you've got to know all about GSI and how it all works, and when I change this variable, what's going to happen over here, and it's much more messy.
Yeah. All right, well, thanks for coming.
Any other questions?
Yeah, bye, thanks everyone.
All right, well, thanks for coming, everyone. Yeah, bye. Yes, bye, thanks everyone. Yeah. Even if we go, so basically the observations we currently have NCA gradient drop in the monitor and GP. That's where a lot of the work comes in. That's where a lot of the work comes in. The
Yeah,
I'm wrong class here. So, I was kind of trying to understand what you're saying. Stuff I can understand. I was kind of trying to understand what you're saying. What I have is I have a and I have some I have parameters. So, I have some I need to say R, K, so I need to say R, K, yeah. Can I use your stuff? Can I use
yeah, I think you probably could.
like minimize this function?
Yeah, I think you probably could. You might have to think a bit about how to formulate.
I mean, I don't have any view
the same form as this.
I didn't know the relation between the two. I mean, I don't have any view here. So I didn't quite know the relation between the two.
Yeah. Okay. So
what is
yeah. So H is okay. So basically here we have contrast. So H is XP. Okay. So basically here we have contrast and the ultimate forecast. You could have and then the XP is the forecast. And then the XP is the forecast. More specifically, D is the more specifically is the background, which basically means it's the real forecast from 6 hours ago, which basically means what we call this the background forecast from 6 hours ago, and then what we call this the background variance. So it's not the model error, it's the background error. So previous model error is the background error. So then previous analysis error sort of merged with the background. Okay, so then there's an I here because something over observation. This is sort of like H of X over observation. H of XP, this is sort of like the observation equivalent. That's right. H of XP is the observation equivalent. Yeah. So for example, like a satellite measures brightness temperature. So for a model variable, like a satellite measures brightness temperature. The model variables are, wind, compute brightness temperature, moisture. So you have to compute brightness temperature from those variables.
You said temperature, so like wind temperature, go back. So you said temperature, right? So like wind temperature.
Yeah, they're also, so X naught, X P, those are, they're also, so X naught is a variable, one is, like the X naught is the wind temperature and
so is the vector X?
P, it's a vector dot U at every good point, P at every good point, it's a vector U at every good point, P at every good point, T at every good point.
So like in my case, I have a vector, I have 10 or 20 variables.
So you could formulate them into X.
10 or 20 variables.
So you could formulate them into.
And that's the minimizers? You have like different minimizers?
Yeah, so that's basically.
And that's the minimizers? You have like different minimizers?
So that's basically what. That's right. I think it's a collection of minimizers.
So I think I hear you say like minimizers?
Oh, okay. Yeah, partly. And then I've been